The Fan.
Goessling covers the Minnesota Vikings for the Star Tribune. Hear him late in the week with Bumper to Bumper, Tuesdays with 9 to noon. At Ben Goessling via Twitter, if you would like to follow as 9 to noon does. And once again, covers the Vikes for the Strib, and he's in studio with us now. So just a simple overarcher, that does not require a full season prognostication. But you're an elite football mind and you're a scribe. And Philly is on the horizon in 2 days, and the Fan has learned they're quite good.
Yes.
From 0-1, the Vikings. Where do they go from here?
Well, it gets tough. I have thought the Philly game is going to be tough for them to win the entire time. That's, I think, part of the reason I and most of us thought. I mean, this wasn't my original thought, but that's what made the Tampa game so important, I think. So to lose that, if you go lose on Thursday in Philly, which I think is quite possible, then you've got Justin Herbert at home, and then 2 weeks later, it's the Chiefs at home.
And Chris Jones is back.
Yes, Chris Jones is back, which he was not against the Detroit Lions. So it gets tricky awfully fast. It's one of those that, the Chargers give up enough points, that game could turn into a shootout. I'm not saying that that's like chalk that in the L column, but the Chiefs, I think, becomes awfully tough. So you could be looking at, maybe 3-2, 2-3 to start. I think 2-3 is possible to go at the beginning of this thing. I guess 2-3 probably be where I would think it goes right now, looking at Chiefs, Eagles being what they are, and that's not how anybody wanted to start. The middle of the schedule looks more favorable as much as we can project these things, but you have to get through this early stretch, and losing that game to Tampa is one that makes it harder to do that.
What was the feeling like in the locker room right when you got in? Because I got down there late.
Yeah.
And a lot of people were quick to get out. It's a home game. I'm in the locker room longer on road games than home games.
Yep.
So therefore I get down there. I'm like, hey, ain't that many people here. What was it like?
Yeah, it was a little bit of that. The quick departures, I think, were driven maybe by people just being dumbfounded, frustrated. I don't think deflated necessarily, but that was a game. I think that it would be hard to sit there and linger in it and feel like, let's hang around for a very long time. Just because it was not well played. They made enough mistakes to kind of cost themselves that game. So it's one that, even yesterday it felt around there like it just kind of left a bad taste in a lot of people's mouths. And it's one of those they haven't played many games like that under Kevin O'Connell. The losses have been they've just gotten their doors blown off. It has not been one of these where it's, the unforced errors are really what cost us. That reminded me a lot of the 2021 opener in Cincinnati, where it's just a lot of unforced errors that take a game from this is one that they should win to hey, they're going to end up losing this thing, and there's nothing they can do about it.
See, if you're looking for different, and these things can be like snowflakes in that they're the same, but no two are alike.
Yeah,
and with just the early stages of this season, they're like you just mentioned, you mentioned in passing or alluded to, like last year in the regular season, they were 11-0 in these one-score games.
Yeah.
So I don't know about you during the game, if you're conditioned off last year to think like they're going to find a way to win.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking the whole time.
The whole game.
Yep.
I was like, okay, -3, okay this, okay that. They just had the ball 9 minutes, and there was the goal stripe, the goal line interception after the elite 42 by Jefferson. But they're going to win.
Yeah.
But as different would go, you're right with Dallas and Philadelphia and Green Bay and some of those losses last year, they got obliterated.
Yes.
Well, their last two losses have been tightly contested.
Yep.
and 11-0 in the one-score piece in the regular season. Well, they've lost their last two one-score games.
Yes.
So it's different. And one of them is a trend that's heading the wrong way in the one-score department. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and that's, I think, the reason anybody that was hedging on them last year was pointing to that, saying it's not sustainable to win one-score games all the time. These things balance out. Because, I mean, you go back to 2021, it was the other way, where they were saying, hey, we're a lot better than this. We're just losing all of these one-score games and finding ways to lose them at the end. And I do think they did a lot of things last season, especially with Kirk Cousins leading 8 fourth-quarter comebacks, where they did a lot of the right things to pull those games out. I don't think it's all random that those games go that way, but you also sit there and say 11 in a row of these things. That's a pretty hard push to one extreme. Some of them are going to come back the other way, and the Giants game certainly did. And that one felt a little different to me than this one did. This one was a lot of just, there are plays there to be made at the end of the game, and they didn't make them. I mean, right down to that last throw to Godwin, there just were a lot of these things that you saw them find a way to come up with the play they had to have at the end, and they didn't do it Sunday. And you're right, that 2 in a row now, both of them at home, it's a trend worth watching. It's certainly concerning to have that happen twice in a row.
What Ben Goessling, what you think of the defense when you watched it back, talked to people about it? Because I think the fair assumption is it will become more rote, more second nature.
Yep.
Play by play, quarter by quarter, week by week. So therefore, what we saw this weekend, which I don't think by any stretch was terrible. There were some opportunistic situations the Bucs capitalized on, which really flipped the game. But overall, the defense and the potential for improvement from the Tampa game.
Yeah, I thought overall, I was fairly enthusiastic about what I saw on that side of the ball, more so than, and some of it's based on, kind of what's your baseline. If you're thinking the offense is proven, you have all of these veteran players that have shown what they can do, you're thinking that, okay, the baseline's a little higher. On defense, at least externally, you're thinking, well, it's younger players. Nobody really knows what this is going to be. Internally, they've seen it. They're probably feeling differently about it. But when you haven't seen it every single day, that's kind of how you're coming into it. From that perspective, I thought they did a lot of good things. I thought they tackled fairly well for the most part. I thought the pressure packages got to Baker Mayfield at times. Probably not as much as they would have liked. They had some sacks that they turned into pressures that he got away from, but they were pressuring him, and there were not the coverage busts from the blitzes, at least to the degree that I was expecting to see. The touchdown, Josh Metellus said he was expecting a corner route, and Mike Evans double-crossed him there, and that happened on that play. And then the one to Powell at the end of the game, it looked like maybe a little bit of confusion in coverage in the end zone on the shorter one, or Palmer, I should say. But overall, I thought they did a better job kind of keeping the lid on some things than I worried they might do. And I think they're going to get better at it. I think you're going to see a lot of these roles continue to develop. Josh Metellus was on the field like 85% of the time.
Yeah. 77 plays.
Yeah.
And believe it or not.
And playing on a lot of spots, too.
57 on defense and 20 on special teams.
It's a big day.
Yeah, believe it or not, that's like the third most he's played in his career. I couldn't believe that because I'm going to sit down with him at 1 today for X's and O's, which airs tomorrow night. So I went deep diving, and I'm like, all right, 77. I mean, that's got to be the most, right? He played like roughly 180 or 175 plays combined against the Lions last year.
I suppose, those are both long games with a lot of special teams.
I know. Now, with Metellus, is he a safety or a linebacker?
Well, he played a lot of linebacker on Sunday.
Crazy.
I mean, they had him. I mean, when I was watching it back, because I try to chart personnel fairly diligently.
Really?
I try to do it live as best I can, which is not very good because you just can't when you're going live at it. But went back and watched a lot of it. There were a lot of times where it's like, okay, it looks like they have 2 linebackers, but wait, one of those is Josh Metellus. There were quite a few packages where they had him basically with Jordan Hicks. There were some times where he was in the A-gap, kind of the old Mike Zimmer look, where they had both of them on either side of the center. They had him playing slot corner at times. They had him playing outside. I mean, they moved him all over the place.
Yeah.
And
it's like his Michigan days.
Yeah.
Because if you read up on him from Michigan, a free and strong safety, outside linebacker, slot corner, and even mixed in a little on the outside at corner.
Yeah, and when you sign him before the season like they did, you're not doing that based on sort of this massive resume that would tell you, okay, he's going to be a free agent after the year, but they're paying for that more based on how they are planning to use him and the vision they have for him, I think. And I think Sunday was a window into that. You're going to, I think, see a lot of him going forward. And in a lot of ways, they had, their nickel package was more with him.
Yeah.
It was almost more Mekhi Blackman, only when they got in a dime.
Yeah.
He only played like 15 snaps. So it was an interesting window into kind of what they're thinking of how they're going to use people.
But with those three safeties and where Bynum was playing all over the field, it's almost like they inherently are nickel every play, even when it's just when it's Murphy and Evans. So it has a base feel. But with Metellus, who can cover, and Bynum, who can cover and tackle, they kind of have a perma nickel without it being a nickel.
Yeah, they do. Just because you can move Metellus around as much as you can and play all these different spots. They had a number of times where it was kind of this 3-3-5 thing going on too with nickel. So you're going to see a lot more variety in that regard throughout the course of the year. I thought overall it was a good first showing. It gets a lot tougher. Going forward, so you have a better sense of what they really are going to be probably Thursday night and then going forward from there. But it was, I think, a window into what you're going to see. And it's, put it this way, it's a performance I thought was good enough to win the game, which makes what they did offensively even that more glaring of a missed opportunity.
The Nords.
Do you think best case scenario over the course of the season that we are going to see him settle into maybe specific defensive packages or groups? There was so much, and Metellus is kind of part of this, whether he's playing significant portions at linebacker or he's back in three safety-esque looks. We saw rotations at corner. At one point, we had Troy Dye and kind of just everybody got a chance, right? But over the course of a season, of course, talent will play out in certain areas. And so do you feel that this is a vibe of a long-term look at what we'll see? Or at some point, if a Metellus proves himself? I like what I saw from Mekhi Blackman on the outside. I'd like to see more snaps from him, that even though we're in season, there are still positions to be won, and maybe solidify some of those spots to eliminate confusion and get the best out of this group long-term.
Yeah, it is going to be interesting to watch. I think certainly you'll see some where players play themselves into roles, or maybe players play themselves out of roles. Injuries will have a piece of this as well. Overall, though, if everybody shows that they can do the job, which I admit is a big if, there's, I think, a fair amount of variety built into this, because Brian Flores, talking with him before the season, he pointed a number of times, say, hey, even though I spent a year around Mike Tomlin and enjoyed that time and learned a lot from him, he said the core of this for me, my football upbringing, is still Bill Belichick. And Bill Belichick is famous for, hey, if this is the game plan we need this week to beat this team, this is what we are going to do. It has this shape-shifting nature to it in what he learned from Belichick that makes me think there's going to be a fair amount of that built into this defense, where you're going to see different looks every week. You're going to see players asked to do different things based on what that opponent calls for. So you may start to see some consistency through the course of the year. I think that'll happen kind of organically, but I also think this is a approach that has some things built into it where each week's game plan is going to look different just based on how they want to go about it.
Well, you mentioned looking different. Baker Mayfield's never been much of a runner, but he can kind of scramble around back there, right? And in some ways, it felt like you mentioned those pressures that just didn't get home. He was almost too comfortable and just allowed to be pedestrian and win the game. But now with Jalen Hurts, you want to talk about a different game plan, right? Just the actual designed runs around him and the focus. And this is a guy, by the way, that is very comfortable scrambling, throwing off of uneven platforms and all of that. This is going to be the very first opportunity we get to see Flores doing maybe something completely different from game to game.
And you're getting Hurts off 170-1 in New England. All right? Yeah. They got the money, but his yards per attempt was 5.1. So that ain't going to go into the fours.
No, it's not.
It'll go to the sevens or eights before it goes to the fours.
Yeah, it is a challenge that I think is fairly different than most of the ones you'll see this year, because of all of the different things he does and all of the ways that they're kind of comfortable using him. Do you kind of sell out on trying to keep him pinned in, knowing that he could throw downfield? I mean, that was the game plan last year. I think everybody said, make him play quarterback. I think that was the narrative coming out. He showed he can play quarterback, and he has receivers that can make you pay as well. So I think that's probably still the way you want to do it, is try to keep him pinned in as much as you can, keep him from getting out on the perimeter. But he can beat you with his arm as well. So these corners are going to have to show they can do some of the things we saw in spots downfield on Sunday. They're going to get tested again Thursday night, probably in a higher quantity than they did Sunday.
Well, consider this. If they lose Thursday and start 0-2, I mean, the level of concern with making the playoffs only will increase. The Lions host Seattle. Feels like 2-0 for the Kitties. Green Bay is at Atlanta. So you could be chasing a couple of teams. 2-0. Now, what was your take on and I read about it. Michael Rand was actually where I first read about it, and then I went to Twitter and I found it.
Yep.
Kirk O'Bang with Chris O'Hara, the quarterback's coach. I mean, complete meltdown after the interception at the goal line. And any idea why Kirk melted on the sideline?
I don't know entirely. I know he was, and he talked about it after the game, that he wished he would have moved on to Jordan Addison sooner than he did, because I think he felt like he had an opening there with Osborne, and he was trying to lead Osborne not right into the safety so he gets hit over the middle of the field. So that's the throw behind Osborne, is in part because of that. But then that obviously puts it for the safety to come in and take it away from Osborne like he did.
Did he have time to move on to Addison? Because it felt like, I mean, he was pushing himself forward into that pocket.
Yeah, he was. He stepped up.
That was an off-balance throw in that moment.
Yeah, I think, if anything, the first read in that play is Hawkinson, and he hung on Hawkinson for a little bit longer. He hitched once. That probably threw the timing of the whole thing off a little bit.
Good point.
Osborne said afterwards that he had been told to kind of keep that route thin all week. So, probably a little more of a skinny post there. And I think he did that for the most part, but it's going to be interesting because and I'm a terrible lip reader, so take this for what it's worth, but the vibe of it in the video certainly made it look like I wasn't a big fan of this call. I mean, that I don't know that for sure. That just
bang.
That had that look to it in terms of why he would have been that riled up, I think. But, I don't know that for sure. I haven't had that conversation with him specifically. It just kind of looking at the discussion could have been some of that. And I think we'll have to find out more of what it looks like going forward. But yeah, it was a moment to change the game. I mean, if you score there and you go up 17-10 at halftime, it's a completely different thing.
Well, then they get that 9-minute piece to begin the second half.
Yeah. I mean, you go basically sitting on that for 35 minutes, 40 minutes of real time, something like that. So it was as big of a turning point as there was in that game. And I think there's a lot of, you saw Justin Jefferson come off the field after that one too, when he lays the safety out and then loses his helmet, and he was pretty upset on the sideline as well. So yeah, the frustration was certainly mounting a little bit there. And the other thing that's worth watching there is Cousins talked about, well, in retrospect, I shouldn't have thrown it. Kevin O'Connell has said a couple times, no, I like the fact that you were aggressive there. I like the decision. The ball placement, he said, is kind of what we need to talk about, if anything, but I don't want you to stop being aggressive. And that's kind of, I think, always the back and forth between those two, is saying, hey, even if it turns into a mistake, even if it's something that makes you mad in the moment, we need to keep our foot on the gas. And I think that's going to be the exchange between those two going forward.
Last year against the Eagles, season low 11 carries on the ground for the Vikings offense. Yesterday, Sunday, just 17 attempts. And this offense is pass heavy as it can be. That is going to be the focus. That's where the money is. That's where the weapons are. Totally get it. Now, Alexander Mattison is trying to do his best Dalvin Cook impression moving forward. But that, I expected more, if that makes sense, on Sunday.
Yep.
And part of it is just my focus on the additions and how things looked. C.J. Ham, I think, played the most snaps he's played in nearly 2 years.
Yes.
So you saw some of the intentions to get a little heavier up front there in support. But in the end, it kind of fell flat for me. Not a lot of explosion there. And this was a game, at least score line wise, even with limited possessions in the second half, that kind of dictated an opportunity for the Vikings to try and play some keep away and establish the run.
Yeah, it turned into more of a drop back game than I expected. I mean, if you would have come into that one and said Kirk's going to throw it 44 times and Alexander Madison's going to have 11 carries, I would have said that that's probably not how I would see that one going. But they didn't have as many productive runs as you need. And a lot of the yards Madison did have, watching it back, it was 2, 3, 4 yards after contact where he's having to carry somebody and fall forward, which is something they like. That's something he does really well. But you don't want that happening as close to the line of scrimmage as it did quite a bit. Kevin O'Connell said yesterday, a lot of it was just the blocking up front. There were some times where he felt like they didn't do quite a good enough job of getting aligned, of getting somebody sealed off to keep an opening clear for Madison or to maybe open up a crease for Madison to get through. That is not going to get any easier Thursday night against that front. That said, if you get into a drop back game with that team, with that pass rush, with the guys they have lurking in the secondary, and it sounds like James Bradbury may not play because of concussion, but you don't want to get into the drop back type game in that building that you had last year. So I think there has to be a little bit of a commitment to it. And that's always the tension, because if it's not hitting early, you say, well, we can't have 3-play drives and give them the ball all the time. But if you commit to it and you can be somewhat productive with it, and especially keep your defense from having to play 36 minutes against Jalen Hurts, I think there's some value in that too.
Ben Goessling, Star Tribune, StarTribune.com. More football conversation around the corner.
Home for football.
Wet my whistle.
The NFL.com, all 22, pretty easy to navigate, right? I mean, at least at least you know the down and distance and the score and what part of the game is when you jump into it. I mean, seriously, I mean, it's expensive.
Yeah.
And it's cool to have if you want to get if you want to shape opinions.
Right.
But unless I'm doing something wrong here, it doesn't show down in distance or quarter as like a little graphic like you used to.
Nope, it has.
What the hell?
A lot of this stuff just feels like it's gotten harder to use. And
I'm trying to get to the interception for Kirk O'Bang to see what Addison was doing, to see if he was claustrophobic. And I watched the play multiple times,
right,
for multiple reasons on the condensed game.
Yep.
But I don't know.
You got to just scroll forward and find it. I mean, it's not efficient. It's not a quick use of time, but it's it has gotten clunkier over the last few years. That's for sure.
Were you surprised Jefferson didn't get new money into the Bucs game?
Yeah, I was. It seemed fairly optimistic early in the week last week that it was going to get done. They seemed fairly encouraged by how things had gone. I mean, everything you kind of heard coming out of there seemed like it would happen. And just that tends to be how these things go, where it's Saturday before the deadline of, hey, I'm going onto the field tomorrow. I don't have my guaranteed money yet. What if something happens? Tends to lead players to say, okay, I'm going to do the deal now. What makes this one a little bit unique, and I don't know this for sure yet, but I would assume this has played into some of it, is that Jefferson didn't have to do this right now to the point where he would have had to say, okay, I need to take this because it's now or never. I'm only 24. I have another year before free agency, and the market is only going to go up. So if they're not going to meet my terms exactly as I want them, I can bet on myself and wait. It could backfire in the sense of if you have an injury, that money may not be there quite in the same way, depending on how bad the injury is. But you can also say, if I don't get hurt, I haven't been somebody that's gotten hurt. I've put up big numbers. If I continue to do that, I'm only going to have a chance to make even more money next year. Yeah. So if you are of the type that says I'm going to bet on myself, I guess I can see that strategy. It's bold, but I can see why you might do it. The other thought process was get it done now and then put yourself back on the market by the time you're 28. But he's signed for this year anyway, so it may not matter all that much in the grand scheme of when he gets another shot to get on the market when he's 28, 29 years old.
And signed for next year.
Yeah.
I wonder how JJ and his representation look at, well, you know what? Technically, we have you under contract for 2 years. And then we got this little thing called the franchise tag.
Right, which they could use twice.
Right. So, technically, we could keep you here for 4 years.
Right.
And the franchise stuff's sweet money. But nevertheless, I wonder how they look. And by the way, looking at this all-22 now, how was Jay Ward offside on that field goal?
He said he checked. He said he checked with the ref, and the ref told him he was good. So
what the hell?
Maybe he creeped forward an inch or two, but I would think if you check with the side judge and they say, yeah, you're good, you could tend to go on that. But it's not the first time I've heard somebody say, yeah, I checked with the ref, he told me he was good, and then I get flagged for something.
Well, no, I've watched it 3 times.
Yeah.
Unless, seriously, like a hand was offside 6 inches.
Yeah.
But he didn't jump.
Yeah.
He didn't jump the gun, man. I don't understand.
It's a pretty big moment in that game, too, if you're calling it that tight. They can call what they're going to call, but it's always interesting with some of those things because some of those things get called very, very tight, and then other times you just miss things. And it's human nature. It's part of having human referees. But that was a big moment in that game.
So Nordo hit on it a bit earlier, ran for 41 against the Bucs. The long was 9. Like in the preseason, up to that Arizona game, man, our long was stuck on like 9, 10, or 11. So, does that mean present tense? Is that a harbinger? Probably not, but nevertheless, they throw 74% of the time?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. 61 last year, and it got past Happy, which surprised me and surprised you. But here's the bit, is in the Star Tribune, Ben wrote about a remade running game, and the first test yields underwhelming results. So, with that said, what do you see coming from the totality of the running game? Like Brandon Powell didn't play an offensive snap.
Nope.
Now I'm not, ain't nobody trying to make Brandon Powell all pro, but he did run a fair amount for the Rams last year, and I'm not even sure they faked a jet.
No.
You see what I'm saying?
Yeah, there wasn't much of that.
I think that's coming.
Yeah, I would think so.
It wasn't there.
Yeah, in terms of like the Jefferson stuff, there were, I think, a couple of motions that kind of were on window dressing when the ball was maybe going the other way, but there was not a lot of pre-snap that would suggest, hey, we need to worry about this receiver coming on a jet sweep or an end around or something. So, yeah, I would think there's those things in there. They were in there last year, and there's no reason they wouldn't be there again. But you do have to find some way to get big plays, and this was the trade-off. They knew this with the Madison over Dalvin Cook piece of this, that the thing you lose with Dalvin Cook is the ability to get big plays downfield, and they have said it's more important to us if we're picking one over the other to say it's likely we can get 4, 5, 6 yards a pop, and we are in second and manageable, third and short more often. That is kind of the approach they took. And Madison's had some moments where he runs for 15, 20 yards, but you're not going to see the big type chunk plays that Dalvin Cook was capable of producing as often with Madison, I don't think. Now, you have to find ways to get 12 at times rather than just being 4 and 5. But I think a lot of that comes down to blocking up front, being able to create some more openings for him to hit things downhill without having to dance and get away from a defender right at the line of scrimmage. That will have to happen in time. The other question there, though, is that if Garrett Bradbury is dealing with a back again and you still have questions in the middle of that line, even with the guys that are healthy, how are you going to get that thing going to the point where it can be a good counterpunch? I think that's still a valid question. Ben, I've now watched it from sideline and end zone angle, the interception right before halftime. And, with NFL Plus came through for you. After searching for it while you were talking for 5 minutes. But nevertheless, it's Cousins' meltdown with the quarterback coach on the sideline. And I don't have any steam or intel. It has to be what you said earlier. Yeah. He just hated the play. It's okay. So you can try Addison. Right. I didn't think that was great.
No, it's terrible. And Jefferson's going to be doubled.
Right.
But then Antoine Winfield Jr. runs to the KJ spot, but he's going to be doubled. So I guess you can throw a 33-63, a 33-64 ball up there if you want. I ain't going to do that. But the thing that I don't like about this is Hawkinson runs straight down the field with Levante David on him.
Yeah.
And he pulls his man to where the ball is.
Yeah.
So now you have 4 Bucs and 2 Vikings within 8 feet of each other. Yeah, I started the show by, wondering, why Kirk O'Bang was melting the way he does, having not watched this, but I said the pass was in tight quarters.
Yeah.
So ain't nobody bitching about KJ and not coming back for the ball or something like that. That can't be it.
No.
It just has to be, it's like there are 2 guys by KJ, Hawkinson's between the hash marks, so now he pulls the safety between. I mean, this is unbelievable. So that's what it has to be.
Yeah, and I think O'Connell talked about it after the game too, saying we knew that it was going to be tight. You're going to have to kind of throw it in there. That is not, I think, generally the way Kirk Cousins likes to live. He's not the Brett Favre gunslinger type of I'm just going to rifle it in there. He's got the arm strength to do it.
Well,
but I don't think he loves that.
Okay, he did pump.
He hitched on Hawkinson, yes.
Yeah, he hitched. There you go. Well, see, if he hits KJ on the slant at the 5.
Yep.
He's wide open.
And KJ does have inside leverage there.
So therefore, now KJ would lower the shoulder at the 4.
Yep.
And probably get close to the goal line.
Right. Or at least close enough you can bang it in from the 1.
Yeah. So that's, wow. What a tumultuous start to this whole thing.
Yeah.
What about A-Raj last night? Holy cow.
Yeah, man, oh, man.
I will see you in Philadelphia.
Yep.
God bless you, young man. And,
you as well.
Thank you very much for the inclusion, and talk to you soon, all right?
Sounds good.
On the Fan.
Welcome back. News to Nord brought to you by The Casino at Canterbury Park. CanterburyPark.com. Whether it's live racing details, days here, days there, as the 2023 season is coming to completion. But of course, you got to get there and feel the felt. All day, every day, all year long, poker, blackjack, and table games.
And the debut of Bingo tonight.
Whoa!
Bingo right out at Canterbury Park. BINGO. CanterburyPark.com for information. I'm calling the first game, but I think I'm going to call these games for about an hour.
What about Mouse?
Seems like it's fun.
Does Mouse call the games? Does he get out?
Mouse plays the games and looks to take down the prize, just like you can do if you're interested. But Bingo, I think for once a week now, probably on Tuesdays. Debuts this evening at CBY, CanterburyPark.com for information.
That's sweet.
Bingo.
We're going to get more into the Twins with Gleeman during the final hour. They lose 7-4 yesterday to the Rays. Sonny Gray only earns 1 run, but 2 were allowed in his 4 innings. Royce Lewis hit a 3-run shot to keep people watching later in the game. They're up 7.5 in the division. This team just needs to get to the playoffs. Mariners and Rangers battling for the final wild card spot. Rangers clinging by a half game. Joe Ryan up tonight. But more baseball as we do get closer to the playoffs because Aaron Gleeman joins us during the final hour. To the NFL, the Jets walk-off winners.
And getting away a line drive. Starts to his left, gets to the 40, turns the corner, at the 45, 50, blockers in front, at the 40, at the Bills 30, inside the 20, stutter steps to the 10, to the 5, touchdown! And it's a Jet touchdown! This game is over!
What a way to end Monday Night Football. Gibson's going to take this one back 63 yards for the touchdown.
That is Bob Wischusen and Marty Lyons. You mentioned him earlier. That's the tag team on 98.7 ESPN Jets radio network. So they walked off winners, but I'm assuming most Jets fans are feeling like losers today.
Takes the snap, drops back, looks over the middle, under pressure, and he will be sacked back to the 32-yard line by Leonard Floyd. So the Bills get a big negative, and Aaron Rodgers gets up with a limp. Aaron Rodgers right now doesn't look 100% right.
Well, that's a delayed blitz because it's got Leonard Floyd, the right
He's going down.
end.
Aaron Rodgers is sitting down in the field. He's hurt. 11:15 to go in the opening quarter, and Aaron Rodgers is injured on the sack by Leonard Floyd. And the Jet training staff surrounds him, and Zach Wilson pops up and starts to get ready and take some warm-up throws.
Yeah, he went 14-21 at a touchdown and a pick. Zach Wilson, and here's Robert Saleh, head coach of New York Jets, afterwards.
All right, I'll deal with the quarterback real quick. Concerned with his Achilles. MRI is probably going to confirm what we think is already going to happen, so prayers tonight, but it's not good.
And Saleh believed, team believed, the entire planet believed that it was going to be the Achilles. An MRI this morning did indeed confirm that, PA. So Aaron Rodgers out for the remainder of the 2023 season. Enter Zach Wilson with an opportunity to carry this thing forward. And but into the game for a moment, Josh Allen. So Josh Allen, I forget what the number was. He set a record through his first 5 seasons with passing and rushing TDs his first 5 years. The problem is he was also tied with the most turnovers over that time with Jared Goff. I think that number was 80. Jordan Whitehead picked off Josh Allen 3 times last night. He also had 2 fumbles, one of which he lost. So a 4 total turnover game for Josh Allen. So on a night, I don't know if you were able to catch the entire game, but in the sense of the horrific part of the injury to Rodgers, which we really chronicled quite well during the opening segment today, podcastable, free iHeartRadio app. And then Josh Allen in the football, the competitive side of it. There was a lot of ugliness all around with opening Monday Night Football and Jets Bills.
Yep, no doubt. And Josh got paid, and I'm not one to be like that. He's all fat and happy with his cash and everything. But ever since he got paid the way he got paid, things like this have been happening. The Vikings game last year, he got picked off to lose the game by Patrick Peterson at the end. So Josh is formidable. Josh is a load when he's out in open field, and I'd love to have Josh Allen on my team. He ain't the same as he was before he got paid. And this Bills bunch is just beleaguered. I think that's the enigmatic and beleaguered would be the best 2 words to describe them.
Finally, in the NFL, speaking of getting paid, Chris Jones. He did not get a contract extension, but he did get some new money in 2023 to end the hold in or hold out. He was in a suite last Thursday for the opening game against the Detroit Lions. Would have liked to have him on the field. Now he's going to be on the field. Really? That $19.5 million salary, that does not change, save for the money lost, the game check from not playing week 1. But he has incentives. This is according to ESPN's Jeremy Fowler. He'll get $1 million for 35% playing time. Stay healthy, that's easy. $1 million for 50% playing time. Stay healthy, that should be pretty easy. And $1.5 million for 10 sacks. He'll get an additional $500,000 for 15 sacks. $1 million. You're getting where this is going. He graduates first team All-Pro or Chiefs playing the Super Bowl. $1 million. $2 million, Defensive Player of the Year, Chiefs win the Super Bowl, etc. So they can still, I saw this as well, the Chiefs can still actually franchise tag Chris Jones after this season, which kind of means that this conversation is not over. But in terms of the MV3, as Patrick Mahomes waits to get Travis Kelce back with this knee thing, they know that they will now have Chris Jones back on the field for Sunday and beyond.
Yeah, Chris, as I said yesterday, Chris is one of my very favorite defensive players in the league, and he has been since he came into the league. And there were some college-related issues or something where people were scared to put Chris on their roster, but Chris has come through, and the MB3 part of the equation is just so very key with Travis Kelce, Patrick Mahomes, and Chris Jones, because if they can keep those 3 paid so that those 3 are satisfied being paid whatever number it is they are paid, then they can draft and manipulate the rest of the roster and go to Super Bowl after Super Bowl after Super Bowl after Super Bowl. So if you are in the camp where, like with the Minnesota Vikings, say you don't believe Kirk Cousins is the elite enough quarterback to get you to the Super Bowl, and you are willing to do whatever it would take to get that kind of quarterback. First of all, it costs a lot. Secondly, you got to be right. But it just what the Chiefs did to move up and get Mahomes, and then the way, since he's been in the league, that they've been able to manipulate the financial wherewithal or lack thereof of their roster has been a masterpiece. And if you're a Vikings fan who wanted to do something like that, then, I mean, it's multiple first-round picks, might be players. But, some would say, who cares? Who cares? I mean, if you like here, say that was your maneuver or your approach in the future, and you keep Darisaw or Jefferson, maybe Hawkinson, that's formulating the MV3 is so very key. And KC has it back.
That's News to Nord, brought to you by The Casino at Canterbury Park. Go to CanterburyPark.com for all event details, including bingo at Canterbury. Go win some money on bingo, as well as poker, blackjack, table games. Love that place. You will too.
CanterburyPark.com. Bingo tonight, 6:30. I'm calling some games. 10:58 up in the neighborhood into the final hour. Here comes the techie to chat Twins and more on KFAN.